Hello, 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 and welcome. Welcome to today's installment of Created for More, the podcast. So it is our Valentine's edition, and I am dressed appropriately in Valentine's red. So I hope you approve. Hey, today's topic, it might actually be a contradiction to that, but let's see what you say. So today I thought, in the spirit of Valentine, in the spirit of love, I will bring to you an activation series, part of our activation series, which is when I come and I have a solo session. My topic for today that I'd like for us to explore together is true love versus people pleasing. You see, so that's why I said I hope you approve early, and I winced a bit. So true love versus people pleasing. So in this season where everyone's all about love, we're all doing all these things, people are just out there celebrating, which is a beautiful thing. I am, happily married for a number of years, so I'm all about all of that. And not to say that love only exists in marriage, I'm just using that as an example. As you know, it doesn't. We find love with our friends, we find love with our, extended family members, and in all walks of life, right? However, what I would like to explore is when we are actually, in sort of significant relationships with other people, a lot of our interactions with them, are they from a place of true love, or are they from a place where we are feeding an addiction, which will usually be like a people-pleasing addiction? And it is so easy to get the two modeled up, and that is why I feel it is such an important thing to discuss, so that you ensure that you are not being caught out. And as well, what I'm going to be giving you on this podcast are telltale signs, so that you can start to see and weigh your significant relationships and see if they're actually doing the things that you're doing in those relationships from a place of actual love, or you're just doing it because you are feeding an addiction. So where we start is just really deconstructing the word people pleasing. Like, what does it actually mean, people pleasing? Am I not right to want to please people? Yes, you are right to want to please people, but people pleasing is a pattern of behavior that you do to gain approval from people at the expense of yourself, at the expense of your own wants. And most times it looks great on the surface of it, because it looks like, you're going out of the way, you're accommodating others, but what you end up doing is saying yes to everything. And really, usually what is at the root of it is that you are avoiding confrontation, you are avoiding conflict, and you don't want anything to risk, those important relationships, such that you will sacrifice yourself on the altar of this so-called good, even if it's at the expense of your actual well-being. And a lot of times when you think about, people pleasing, thinking about it, and really going into it, I was thinking, like, what is this thing that actually causes people to want to please another person at the expense of themselves? And at the heart and the root of people pleasing is really what I believe is low self-esteem. I think that would be one of that. So there are a couple of things. The first one will be low self-esteem. Like, you don't see yourself as important enough. Sadly, for a lot of people, myself included, like, who maybe had, growing up, some spots of trauma when they were growing up. Sometimes what it causes is that it dents our perspective on ourselves. So even if you've moved away from the experience and the trauma and the things that happened that you didn't quite like, a lot of times the perspective that has been formed as a result of those experiences, we oftentimes don't move away from them, except we do intentional work. So a lot of times where you feel that perhaps you are not good enough, where you then get that sense of being good enough, or being validated, or being, worthy, is when you serve another person, when you do what they want at the expense of your own desires. The other thing is also fear of rejection. So for some people who maybe they've had instances or they've had experiences that have created mindset beliefs in them, where they have been rejected. They've done something and they've been rejected in the past. So like a snail, when you touch a snail, it just kind of recoils right back into its shell, right? So it then learns that as a response. So you would call it a trauma response, but it's a response to a certain type of stimuli. So you touch it and it recoils, right? So you learn that as a person, that, you know what, every time I speak up, every time I say something, right, you know, it causes people to maybe recoil from me and move back away from me. So as a result, I don't want to do anything that will cause people to reject me or to move away from me. So what I will do is I will just go along with their wishes, even though it's at conflict with what I truly want and desire for myself. Avoiding conflict is a big one. Low self-esteem is a big one. Fear of rejection is a big one. And the other one I would say would be things like that societal expectations, you know, what you feel like the world expects you to do and how they expect you to behave, which a lot of us sadly fall within this bucket, particularly, you know, people who are from a background that is very, very heavy on cultural values, which aren't a bad thing, but sometimes we then want to then prioritize those set of beliefs and values over how we feel internally within ourselves. And what happens as a result of that then is that we then become unhappy, essentially. So when telltale signs of knowing right now if any relationships that you're currently involved in is feeding your people-pleasing addiction is that you will feel a sense of resentment. I think resentment is a big one. You will feel just and resentment is like an aftertaste, right? You do what you want to do, and then somehow you just don't know why you feel angry or sad afterwards for doing it. And resentment looks like, you know what, do you want to come out with me today? And you feel, you know, that it's a day that you've set aside for maybe doing some studying or having some sort of personal time, or just no. Again, no is a full sentence. You just don't want to go. And you kind of get coaxed into it, like, oh, come now, and then you decide, you know what, okay, it's fine. I'm going to come out with you because, you know, that's fine. That's the expectation. You really, really want it. And then you're going along with a desire that isn't really rooted in what your core conviction is. So you go out, you do it, you have it. It looks well on the outside. Perhaps the person doesn't even know. But what happens is that when you return, you just feel that sour taste in your mouth. You just feel like, that's how they've just kind of used me. You know, I'm behind on this work I should have done, and now I didn't do it just because they just come with their own plans and railroaded me. That is what resentment sounds like. It's like a bitter pill. It's like a bitter after. A pill that has a bitter aftertaste in your mouth. It just feels like, okay, it's okay, but inside of you, you just kind of feel like, you know. So people pleasing, like if you're in a relationship where you are feeding, and I use this words really, really specifically in the order that I use it. So it's not, I won't call it a people pleasing relationship, because the other person might actually have like genuine love towards you, but maybe they just don't know where the lines are, and you haven't given them the directions, or you haven't given them guidance on how to love you, right? So for you, what you're doing is feeding an addiction. So if you're there feeding this addiction, what then happens is that you feel resentment, you feel burnt out as a result of it. So remember I was talking about how resentment is like a pill that has a bitter aftertaste. What happens is that most times when you're essentially dancing to somebody else's tune, it exerts you. You get tired. You kind of feel like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing this. Because remember, when you're doing something that you want to do, a lot of times you get energized by it. Right? You feel stronger, you feel happy, you're like, yes, 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 yes. However, the opposite is true when you're doing something because somebody demands it, or you're doing it in order to please somebody else. It drains you. You just kind of feel that. So the end product of that, if you like, is burnout. You feel burned out, you feel tired, you feel resentful. The other thing that you feel as a result of it is that you lack fulfillment. Remember, I talked about how, okay, there are certain things that you had planned, you then give them up because you're trying to please this addiction that you have but probably don't know. You feel unfulfilled. So I want you to take a minute right now. And I know I've said a lot in a really short space of time. I want to take a minute to just really, really think about it and start to weigh your significant relationships. Start to look at it through the lens of what I have just explained. Are you in relationships currently where you know that you are just dancing to their tune? You are just showing up because they want you to show up and not because you actually want it. Are you in relationships where you feel like it takes away a lot more from you than it actually puts inside of you? So the key difference between true love, so I talked about at the start, difference between true love and people pleasing, right? The core difference between true love and people pleasing is that for true love, the motivation is different. For people pleasing, motivation will always be around getting approval, or you're motivated by a fear of rejection, by getting approval. But true love, the motivation is just a genuine care for the person, a genuine love, a genuine care, and at the heart of it is just a give without necessarily, wanting anything back. I don't need you to approve me for loving you. I just love you because I love you. But a lot of times with people pleasing, you do those things because you are either afraid, you're motivated by fear, or you are expecting something in the form of approval as a feedback for that love. All very important stuff. Think about the motivation that you have, that is at the heart of how you engage in your significant relationships. And I know, yes, we've just had Valentine's Day and everyone's, all loved up. But the truth is, a good proportion, because that's just the way life is, sadly, a good proportion of those activities and those display and PDA demonstrations and all of that, a good proportion of them will be rooted in people pleasing as opposed to actual true and authentic love. Okay, hi there. So interrupting your podcast really, really quickly to bring you a short message from our sponsors. So one of the things I get the most amount of compliments over is actually my hair. Every time someone's bound to say to me when I go out, hey Tonbra, is that your real hair? Have you got tracks in it? It looks so healthy. And the answer is always a resounding no. No, I don't have tracks in my hair. But however, what I do is take care of my hair using real products from accredited brands, such as the Healthy Hair Studio, which is a UK-based brand headed by a trained accredited trichologist, and their products are so amazing. When I use it on my hair, it makes it feel soft, bouncy, and I retain a lot of length as a result. And one of the products I'm gushing over currently is the Mighty Moisture Moisturizer, and every time I use it, the results are just fantastic. So you can head on over to the healthyhairstudio.co.uk If you do /stockist, you'll see stockists all over the world. However, if you're to buy on the website and you're based in the UK, you can snag yourself a special Created for More 10% discount. And what you need to use is the promo code CFM10 to get yourself that discount. If you use that anytime in the month of February 2023 till about the first week, end of the first week in March 2023, and I know that you'll be better for it. So go on, get started on your healthy hair journey, and I look forward to hearing about your results. See you. So I've just laid it bare you. You're thinking to me and saying like, Tonbra, hey, where do I go from here? Like, how do I start to navigate? Like, what do I do? Like, how can you actually help me? How do I increase the dimension of me that has a propensity towards true love, and reduce and hopefully even eliminate, the part of me that is just about this addiction that I have. So the first thing, where you start is really, really evaluating yourself and sitting into yourself and understanding who you are and what you want for yourself. Unless you are able to, get crystal clear and identify your values, it's really, really difficult to notice infringements or to notice early on infringements against, or breaches or infringements against this value system. Because like I said, it's like a pill with a bitter aftertaste. So you might not necessarily know. You just thought, oh yes, I was just going to watch a movie, but then they ended up taking me up to this place. But unless you know what is at the heart of what is important to you, you will not understand why you feel angry afterwards. Yeah, so really understand what your values are. What are your personal values? And understand what your personal values are, as I always preach on this, is it's like your internal compass. It's like tuning your internal compass. So you really understand what is your North Star. What is that place where, I feel, in harmony with myself. I feel incongruence. Like I'm not, I'm not trying to be somebody else. What's that thing that helps me, stay in line with myself, so that I know, take on your time to reflect on what is important and prioritize your value set. Like, what is important for me? What are the things that I will compromise? What are the things that are non-negotiable for me? Okay, so have your overarching big ticket items, that these are my kind of large, no uncompromisable things. And then on a weekly basis, assess yourself. One of the things that, in this generation, or maybe even before, but one of the things I notice a lot from dealing with or engaging with a lot of clients and people that I help, is just that misalignment really around self-appraisal. We don't look at our lives until, it's gone like 2,000 degrees off course. If we get into the habit of appraising ourselves in really, really small increments, it's easier to gauge and get yourself back on track. So it involves asking questions like, why do I feel the way I feel? So I went out yesterday and I felt this way, with this person. Why did I feel this way? Why do I feel a little bit off center? Ask yourself, why is that? Again, resentment taste. But why is that bitter? Sometimes you can't even name it. You can't say you were angry, but you're like, why do I just feel just slightly like somebody's just done something I don't like? Yeah, that's enough. Even if you don't want to say like, why they annoyed me, why do I feel that? Well, and name your emotions. Learn to name your emotions. A great book for doing this, a book called The Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. Absolutely brilliant book. And she dissects about, I think, 77 or so, anyway, above 70 emotions. And she helps you get names for each of these emotions. And you can't deal with something unless you are able to identify it. So get into your truest self. Start to get names for the ways that you feel so that you can assess them against your values. So that means you have to understand what is important to you. That's the very first step. The second step is starting to practice self-love, right? Not waiting for love to always come from outside you. And I'm speaking to you, even you who is married. And some people think like, you know what, it is always my husband's responsibility to make me happy. It is always be my children's responsibility, or it will be my parents, or you know, they did this or they didn't do that. Yeah, you can say that, right? Or you can start with yourself. So do the work of just starting internally to just practice this art, this act, actually, not art, act of self-love, just loving yourself. And that's one of the biggest ways to break people pleasing, because when you start to love yourself, what you are saying is that indeed I am worthy of love. I am worthy of attention. I am worthy of the space that I take. I am deserving of everything. And that's how you then start to create for yourself, you know, healthy boundaries, because what you're doing is prioritizing your own needs and desires. So start to love yourself, start to identify what makes you happy, and start to go in that direction even without needing other people to give that to you. Obviously, there is a place for a love of significant people in your lives, but that should not be where you start. You start from loving yourself first, and then they then pour into you to fill you up. Okay? So that is very, very important. Genuine love is what you need to have for yourself first before other people can mirror the same to you. Okay, so values, identify your values and prioritize it, and then also practice self-love. Love yourself. What does it mean to love yourself? What does self-love look like to you? Because it will look different to you than it will look to me. So what does it look like, you know, for you? And a lot of people can't even answer this question because they haven't ever tried to even think and review from this lens. So what does self-love mean? What does it look like for you? The third thing, when it comes to breaking this addiction, this is what it is in the very practical sense, is a learning to say no. Learning to say no. And no is a full sentence. So look, the first thing you must know is that anybody who cannot hear no from you without getting obsessed or upset with that no, right? Or needing you to justify your no. Why you say no to me? This, that. Anybody who can't hear no to you from you is riding completely on the wings of your addiction. Completely. Because it is challenging for them to understand that you are your own person without needing some sort of placation, you know, in them to, you know, no, for them, for you to say no, it's not enough. That's like, you must say no, you must rob them, you must do all these things, but no in itself is a full sentence. So it is an essential skill you must develop if you are going to break the addiction. And how you do it is that in practice, how it looks like in practice is just, you know, starting small. Start where you are. Say no to small things. So let your first no not be the biggest no in the world. Hey, don't go shouting off the rooftop. Hey, I've said no to this. I am not going to, you know, maybe an event that you've always gone to all your life, and all of a sudden you just come from nowhere and say no. But just practice small. My friend Balade, is a boundaries coach. As you know, you've heard her severally on this podcast, and she's got great insights when it comes to boundaries and awesome materials. So you want to check out the Boundaries Movement on Instagram. They've got great ton of insightful materials on how you can get more, effective, efficient, and at utilizing and using boundaries in a healthy way. Okay, so use your no. Learn to say no. Learn to say no. Practice it now. No, I don't feel like doing this. No, I'd rather not. Yeah. And remember, these people who have been used to you saying yes all your life, it's going to be a shocker. Yeah, it's going to be a shocker to them. Yeah. So maybe you say no initially. No, it's not for me. You just give a bit of, you give them a little bit, something. It's not for me, not at the moment. I'm prioritizing this. I'd rather do this with my time. This is what I feel like it's more important to me in this phase of my life, or And as you build up, it gets to just no, it's just not for me. I just don't want to do it. And it's okay. It's all right. Anybody that gets angry as a result of your no. I used to have a friend. Every time I'll say no to her, she gets so angry. She would literally blow her top off. So initially, I used to be like, I feel like, oh my gosh, like I have to kind of say yes, because I know if I say no, it's going to be, a bad thing, and she'll get so angry. But guess what? One day, I just decided that, what, I'm not going to live like this. I will know every time I will just always have that aftertaste. That aftertaste? That resentment aftertaste in my mouth. Every time I'll go, my plan to get railroaded, and I'll go and do something that she wants me to do, and I really at the heart, I don't want to do it, right? I just have this aftertaste. I just got fed up. I got fed up of it. And what I did was I just zoomed in every time, she would come. I've made a decision on what I will and will not accept, even before I engage a conversation. So it made it easier for me, and before I know it became easier for me to push back. It became easier for me to say no. And after a while, when you start to push back like that, guess what? The expectations they have of you become lesser and lesser. So after a while, they now know that you're not a pushover, so they know that they need to give you time or time that is well in advance of whatever the request is, and they also make a room in their minds for you not being on board with it. So that is how you win. You're going to have those sort of little wins. Okay, say no. And then you also need to practice. Another thing that you need to do is practice assertive communication. And that's communication that, projects your stance without being rude, without coming off as insensitive. And it's an entire art. It's an entire art, being able to say, what, this is what I want. So you want to have to practice I statements, like this is what I want, saying it in a respectful way. And so Google it. What is assertive communication? Practice it. It is an actual thing. And this is what you need at the forefront of breaking your people-pleasing addiction. Okay? And then the other thing is focus, and there's a slight nuance to this one. It's focusing on giving and not pleasing. Focusing on giving and not pleasing. So when you're a people pleaser, you are focusing on giving. But when you're practicing from a place of true love, you're just focusing on giving. You just want to give because you want to give. But when you are focusing on when you're trying to please somebody, all you're doing is just focusing on pleasing. So focusing, and let me say that again. So focusing on giving and not pleasing. And there's a slight nuance with this one, because I know it sounds like, yeah, it's kind of the same. When you give, you're pleasing, right? But it's slightly different. In the foremost part of the mind of somebody who is doing from a place of true love, they're just giving. They're not trying to color your judgment. They're not trying to get something as a result of what they've given. It's just, I'm just going to give. That's it. They're giving you from a genuine place of love and authenticity. And what they want to do essentially is really connect. But it's different when you're operating from a place of people pleasing, because it's colored by that desire to please you, to ensure that there's a part of you that is that it's like filling a part of you, just giving and pleasing you. They're trying to color your view so it's more like, so that they will not get upset, or they're happy. They're trying to make the person happy. Okay, so remember, it's focusing on giving and not pleasing. So think about the conversations that you have going forward after listening to this podcast. Think about the interactions, engagements, and whatnot. Am I focusing on giving, or am I focusing on pleasing? An easy way for us to just kind of litmus test that is, for God so loved the world and he gave his only beloved son. And when Jesus Christ died for us, he was giving us his life. Was he trying to please us? No. At the heart of it was genuine love, genuine connection, and it's there. It's not motivated towards getting us to be pleased and happy. It's saying, I love you and I've given my life for you, and it's there for you. I'm not asking of anything of you. Aside, I am here, and if you do decide, you have your free will. If you decide that you want to come and receive the gift of salvation that I've made available to you, you can. And that's it, really. Not pleasing us, but just giving us. Yeah. So the next one, which is number 6, is all about learning to embrace imperfection. So perfectionism is at the heart. It's a huge proponent. It's a huge fuel for people who people please, because there's this, they're idealistic. It's like, okay, this world has to be balanced in this way, and this is how there is order. I do this and this person is happy and all of that, and there's this desire to have everything perfect so that nobody gets upset. But that's unsustainable, because you get upset. It's just that you don't know it until afterwards. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're not setting yourself impossible standards. There are some people that will not be happy no matter what you do. They look happy, you take them, they do all these things, you sacrifice yourself on the altar of good, but they'll still not be happy. I'm a recovering people pleaser. Yeah. You do. Give your arm, give your leg, your head, everything in between. And at the end of the day, what the beneficiaries of people pleasing will only want more. It will never be enough. So this desire, this ideal that you have of seeing the world just being perfect by your contribution to it through your blood, sweat, tears, happiness, mental health, every single thing will never be realized, because it will never be in. They will do more. So you always have to rein it in. And again, like I said, think and live from your place of truth. What is true for you? What are your values? What do you want for yourself? That's a decision that nobody should be making for you. My daughter, she's 10 years old, and she was saying to me the other day, I was suggesting to her to do something, and I was like, I think you should do this. And she said, look, mommy, life, I think I'd rather do this. And one part of me is like, you're only 10 years old, what do you mean? But I realized that there's truth in what she's saying. Just because I gave birth to her doesn't mean her life is mine or my life is hers. Vice versa. Yeah? So obviously I have parental authority over her until she gets to a particular age, but ultimately it's good for her to start to know that really, really, really and truly that she is important enough to be prioritized. She's a person. She's not a half person. She's a person. So I have to take what she's saying on board, and then obviously at the moment I've got full parental responsibility, myself and my husband. So I will make those decisions for her, but also taking what she wants on board. However, as she gets older, what happens? That transfer of power inevitably happens. Maybe when she's 18 years old, right? And has young for this kind of conversation. And the other part of me is like, oh well, you know, I'm good. I'm happy that you're already thinking this way, because I want you to know that it is your life. I don't want somebody coming to walk all over you, you know, when you go to secondary school, or, you know, you get, I don't know what kids do. I want you to know that you ultimately have the power to make decisions. You can self-determine, right? So I'm happy that, you know, she's making determinations that weigh in the balance of the kind of life that she gets to live. Okay, so remember, you can't have this ideal of perfection, and you've got to lose grip of it. A good story around this as well is my daughters. You know, I set up them this challenge, you know, one time, that they had to work together to complete something for a week. And my older daughter is you know, she just wanted it so much that I think she wanted it a bit too much. Whereas it was a challenge, she would do every single thing like by herself, because her younger sister maybe wasn't pulling her weight or something. Maybe her younger sister didn't want it as much. She'd do everything, and every single day for that week she'd get upset. Oh, I did everything. You didn't help her at all. This, that. And then I said to her one day, you know, before the week was over, I think probably about day 3, I said, why are you doing what you're doing? Oh yeah, because I want the reward. I said, yeah, you want the reward, don't you? She said, yes. I said, but that's a decision that you have made, right? You can't force another person to want a reward. So whereas she was doing what she was doing, but what she was really doing was feeding that addiction to do and be loved. I don't even know if it's the right example, but basically the context of it was she wanted it to be perfect so much that she was willing to sacrifice herself, thereby building resentment for doing what no one asked her to do because she wanted it. No one forced her. I said, it's an offer, it's available. If you want it, go for it. If you don't want it, leave it. But she decided to do it and do everything because she wanted it to be perfect, but then was still upset, right? So after I had that conversation with her, the next day she just changed. She said, you know what? I want it, but not at my expense. She didn't use those words. And she just left it. So guess what? The other one that hadn't been doing before now sees that this whole thing is going pear-shaped, because she had banked on the fact that her sister would do more than her, because she felt her sister wanted it more. And now nobody is, and she starts going like, oh my gosh, and starts pulling her weight. So it's interesting, right? It's interesting, you know, the power, how the balance tips over when you really remove this need for perfection and this idealism. Okay? I hope that helped. And the final point, which is my 7th point, is just seek support. Some things are a bit more in depth, right? Some things have been going on. You have been in this position for years and years and years and years and years. You know, it's like an addict, right? It is an addiction, right? You can't just snap your fingers and just stop being an addict. Sometimes you need support, you need therapy, you need coaching, you need all of these things. So yeah, you might need a little bit more. So it's important to seek, you know, trusted people who know what they're doing to kind of help you, you know, walk away from the ledge, as it were, so that you can come back and really start to, you know, love yourself for who you are and understanding that you are enough. You know, it's coaching. I'm available as a coach. If you need my help on this, you know, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to discuss with you. So yeah, that's what I've got for you today. true love versus people pleasing. And I know that this has been really, really good, even for myself. So what I want you to do is two things. I want you to listen again, because it was a lot to take in. I spoke about things that I know that you need to really, really sit in and process. And the second thing is just share with as many people as you know who need this, because it's important that we are differentiating between true love and people pleasing. Thank you for listening to the podcast today, and speak to you soon.